Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Just going to wait a few seconds here while people call in. All right, people are coming in pretty steady, so I'm going to get us started here so we can move on to our presentation. So good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining the 12th Annual SEEK Forum's 10th webinar, Speeding Decarbonization Efforts with REACH Code Development Tools, featuring Misty Bruceri and Associates, the City of Palm Springs, and the City of Chula Vista. I want to give a big shout out to our sponsors who have helped support the planning efforts for this forum, including the 3 regional energy networks, 3C REN, Bay REN, and SoCal REN, with additional support from Terra Verde Energy, the Energy Coalition, and TRC companies. And I also want to give a huge shout out to our promotional partners as well for all of their outreach efforts and helping get the word out about our sessions and our forum this year. Great, and I just want to point everyone to the Q&A box. You should see a Q&A box on your screen. If you have any questions for our speakers, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So please do just put your questions in there, where you'll also have an option to upvote on other questions that you would like to see us prioritize. So please do use that feature. It really helps us choose which questions to kick us off with. And additionally, we have a chat box. You can feel free to use this chat box to introduce yourself, reach out to staff with any technical issues, and send any resources or anything else like that. And then lastly, I just want to now give it to our moderator for this webinar, Misty Bruceri, who is the technical lead of the statewide REACH Codes program at Misty Bruceri and Associates. Thanks for joining us, Misty.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Just give me one moment. Okay, can you all see that okay?
Looks great, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Misty Bruceri. I am the coordinator for the Utilities Codes and Standards REACH Code program here on their behalf. The program is implemented by PG&E, SCE, and San Diego Gas and Electric. Just going to go ahead and move on here. Let's see, sorry about that. Slide is not, there we go. Wasn't letting me move, I apologize. Okay, I'll be moderating our session today on REACH Codes along with our presenters, Corey Downs from Chula Vista, Eric Engelman of Energy Policy Consulting, and David Friedman from the Palm Springs Sustainability Commission. Corey and David are going to be sharing their experience developing REACH Codes, as well as using the program's new Cost Effectiveness Explorer tool, which Eric is going to demonstrate for us. Before we begin, we'd like to ask a quick question. We'd like to do a quick poll. If you guys would go ahead and put that on the screen, I'd appreciate that. We'll give you just a moment to answer that. If everybody could go ahead and vote as you are able, that'd be fabulous. Essentially, we're just trying to find out what level of experience do you have with REACH Codes? Have you gone through this process already? Are you thinking about it, or is your jurisdiction not even considering it at this time? Okay, can we hold that open for a minute or so? And Serena, do you display the results, or is there something I can do to do that? Ah, there we go. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, our single most popular answer is folks from jurisdictions that have indeed adopted a REACH code focused on decarbonization, which is excellent. It looks like there are several others also evaluating such a code. So thank you again. So to ensure we all, my goodness gracious, I am sorry. Something is going on here with my mouse. To To ensure we all start on the same page, I want to just start by answering the question, what's a REACH code? A REACH code is actually an informal term, really a local ordinance and an amendment often to the building code. For local energy ordinances, the most common part of the code that's amendment, the two most common parts are the Energy Code, Part 6 of the Building Code, or CalGreen, Part 11 of the Building Code. However, depending on the structure of the ordinances, a jurisdiction might choose to amend a different part of the building code, or they may choose to not amend the building code at all and amend a municipal code, such as a health and safety or zoning code instead. There are advantages and disadvantages with each structure, but it depends really on the individual jurisdiction's preferences and objectives. So there's a lot of different rationales for adopting a REACH code. Historically, REACH codes had a very narrow focus, mostly just to save energy and energy efficiency. However, that primary objective has switched, as you are all aware, to decarbonization and reducing emissions. In addition to that, though, we also want to make sure that we implement policies, we develop and implement the policies in a thoughtful way, building in provisions for both equity and resilience as we go, as well as thinking about the future and supporting grid interaction and also load flexibility for people, getting everybody prepared and our buildings as well. So you may have a bunch of different reasons why you may adopt a REACH code, or maybe considering it. Many states in the many cities in the 2019 cycle have adopted REACH codes. We have 51 jurisdictions to date that have adopted a REACH code. It's probably the most jurisdictions that I'm aware of in any cycle that have actually adopted REACH codes. There's a few of these that focus on efficiency. You can see those highlighted over on the left, with the majority actually either encouraging or requiring electrification of some sort. All the way on the right here, you see what we call either a gas ban or a moratorium on installing gas infrastructure. Those tend to be the most stringent, and those have a huge range in scope, from simply requiring the HVAC and hot water appliances to be electric in residential occupancies, all the way to requiring that all new construction be all electric. So it's a very wide range of ordinance types and structures within these categories. So not sure if any of you are like me, but a nice high-level summary is a good thing. But really, when I'm investigating these kinds of things, I'd like to hear from somebody that has actual experience. And so I'm going to go ahead and move forward there and let you hear from those folks. Chula Vista is one of those cities that is a front runner in the San Diego region. And they were one of the first cities to tackle existing homes. They adopted their ordinance last year. Corey Downs is a conservation specialist with the city and was one of the lead staff that shepherded the ordinance through that process. Corey manages the city's residential energy and water efficiency outreach, and he also assists with climate action planning efforts, including compiling GHG inventories and CAP updates. Before working with the city full-time, he was an environmental scientist with AECOM and a climate fellow with ICLEI. Take it away for us, Corey.
Well, thank you very much for having me speak about our experience developing codes for existing buildings. It's always great to share and see how others can take it and improve upon what we've done. Next slide. I'll be talking about our code development process as well as some challenges and next step. This is very much a new ordinance for us to create. And so there is definitely some lessons that we've learned that we want to incorporate in our ordinance, as well as advantages that we want to take advantage of from more recent efforts. Next slide. First, starting with kind of where did this ordinance come from? As Missy mentioned, our ordinance is focused on energy efficiency in existing buildings. One thing that's important to mention is that it was funded or supported through energy efficiency funding sources. So, you know, the long list of electrification ordinances is definitely something that we would encourage and we are looking at pursuing now. But because we had funding for energy efficiency, we decided to pursue an energy efficiency ordinance. We've done in the past, we've done previous ordinances, more traditional percent above code, reach code, solar pre-wiring, gray water stub outs, LED for commercial cool roofing. So we've had some experience with reach codes, but these were all on new construction. In our 2017 climate action plan that was adopted, there was a requirement to expand that to existing buildings as well. Through that stakeholder process, we did have some realtors in our stakeholder group who included in the climate action, not a time of sale. So they were very concerned about it affecting the sale process for them. And I think it was good for us to include this in our ordinance, although if you don't have that pushback, it might be something that you want to consider is looking at a time of sale requirement as well. That does see more, it does have a larger impact than just a retrofit ordinance. Next slide. In addition to the ordinance requirement for new construction that we've done, the city has also done a fair amount of voluntary actions. And so mainly just want to mention this because for a new ordinance like this, we at least got a fair amount of pushback and people asking, is this really something that's required? What supports will be there to help residents and businesses and contractors go through this process? And so it was important for us to kind of flush out some of that before adoption. We provide home energy and water evaluations at homes at no cost. There's a free library or a toolkit that residents can check out at the library that includes LED bulbs, as well as low-flow faucet aerators and some other items that they can keep to help them comply with this ordinance. Then we also have a climate action challenges that encourages voluntary action and provides information and resources. So there's kind of some support structure for helping residents who are required for this, as well as residents who are not triggered by this ordinance. Next slide. Our ordinance is requiring homes built before 2006 that are performing additions and remodels, major remodels, to also perform energy efficiency upgrades. And so I'll talk about a few of what those are, but it is also important to say that it should be some threshold that's selected for how is this going to affect, what homes will this affect. How we do our permits, there was this major remodel that's really tied to structural changes in the home, but some other jurisdictions have done a dollar amount, whether that be $50,000 or $60,000. Anything above that amount qualifies, and so there is a few different approaches to take for that threshold. We did evaluate a smaller threshold, but there was just a lot of concern about what was being required in the home and what the original work was, and we didn't want to have the required work kind of be much larger than the original work. Next slide. So for Chula Vista, what we did was looked at the measures that were in the cost effectiveness study, now in the cost effectiveness tool, Explorer tool. And for Chula Vista, we have 2 climate zones, climate zone 7 and 10, which does make different requirements. There's a lot more that's cost effective in climate zone 10. And that's that 91914 is our zip code in climate zone 10. And one of the developments as we were creating this, it did not get adopted by City Council the first time it was presented. There was some concern about some of the larger packages in that 91914 climate zone 10 area, where residents might be required to do air sealing, attic insulation, and maybe duct sealing. And they were a little bit concerned about just the total number of large projects that are large measures that could be required. And so we kind of scaled that back a little bit. Originally, those homes were required to conduct 5 measures. Now they're 4, and it scales down appropriately. And again, that was because of stakeholder feedback that was concerned. But if you're only in climate zone 7, we probably wouldn't have made that change. It's really for climate zone 10. And we also added some measures that were not cost effective. So this was, these are popular measures that are included in projects, and so we wanted to give builders and homeowners some credit for them. But that was a process that we added as we went along. Next slide. So these are the measures that are currently in our ordinance. And as you can see, the top 5, 6 are all from the cost effectiveness study, that the previous one. The newer are not cost effective, but they're an option. And so our city council members really liked providing builders with more flexibility to meet the requirements of the ordinance, how they best see fit. And there is also an updated cost effectiveness study that we're currently evaluating and looking at, instead of replacing just a kind of one measure requirement, we're looking at weighting the measures. So the measures that do more and save more energy and reduce emissions more will kind of go further towards meeting the requirements of the ordinance. So that's still in process, but for any jurisdictions looking at a new ordinance, that's definitely something that I would encourage you to look into the new cost effectiveness study and see what makes sense for your climate zones. Next slide. Again, so when we were taking this to city council and to the community, existing buildings is something new for our city to kind of add a requirement for energy efficiency. So there was, again, a lot of pushback, especially with the housing crisis going on. They wanted to make sure that, this ordinance wasn't going to prevent new square footage to be built in our community to help meet the housing crisis. And so there is a number of exemptions. A lot of these might have been done, so that if you've already done the improvements, that can be exempt. And I won't go through all of them, but the goal is to really weed out those already homes that have homeowners that have really kind of tried to incorporate energy efficiency as they're built or living in their home, and to really focus on the homes that don't have some of these included already, or where it wouldn't be a good fit, like for a medically necessary repair, or if it's not technically technically infeasible, if it doesn't really, for example, the home doesn't have an attic, well, we can't require them to add attic insulation to that. Our development services staff was concerned about the time to review these exemptions. So conservation staff are going to assist them in some of those reviews. So, that's a really good question to ask with your development services staff, what their bandwidth is. Unfortunately, our development services staff don't have bandwidth to enforce this ordinance right now. So we're providing information about it, but not currently enforcing it until early next year. And we might make that weighted measure change by then too as well. But these were some of the exemptions that a lot of our city council members were really wanted to make sure were included in the ordinance. And on our website, there is forms for all of these if you're interested in how we're kind of tracking that. Next slide. So for the policy development, one area where we used the cost effectiveness tool was in looking at what types of homes are in Chula Vista. And so you can see here's our kind of breakdown of single family homes. We do have a fair amount of, post 2005 homes, but there still is a lot of, the majority of our homes are existing homes in that pre-2006 category. So this was a really good, just kind of a double check to make sure that this is a policy that has a lot of opportunity to be implemented, and it will impact the building stock here in Chula Vista. But you can also look at different thresholds and how that will affect the impact of the ordinance, as well as getting information about that we use for outreach marketing, such as average home savings, the paybacks, and a lot of other information that residents have questions about, as well as for future updates. Like I said, we're looking at the measures, and we can kind of fine tune the ordinance through the cost effectiveness explorer. Next slide. While this ordinance was not necessarily created to with an equity focus, I think, if I could kind of wave my magic wand, we would definitely have some incentives to help some of the lower income households comply with some of these improvements. But that being said, we did not have that. But there are some important ways that ordinances like this do impact equity. And two of those are through improving energy efficiency, comfort, and health of older buildings, which is typically where lower income residents tend to live, not in the newer buildings as much. And so it's really focusing on where the low income residents are living, And it also removes the split incentive. If a homeowner is making an addition to their rental property, it kind of, they're not going to look at this and say, oh, I'm not going to get the return on my investment for this because it's a requirement by the city. They have to do it if they want to do the project. And typically these energy efficiency requirements are relatively modest for most homes, and even the ones that do have more impact, they're still pretty modest compared to the large size of a structural remodel. So we don't think that this will be a big barrier to residents doing retrofits in their community, just making sure that they do a little bit more, and the tenants or the homeowners that are living there get to take advantage of the benefits. There are some other really great information from the Greenlining Institute on how equity can be incorporated into electrification ordinances. So that's another resource that I think is really helpful along this process. Next slide. As I mentioned, so our next steps are, in a lot of ways, we're still in the process of trying to get this enforced in our community. So we're going to be working with our development services staff to make sure that they have all the tools and resources that they need to enforce this. We're also promoting it generally, even if you're not going to be doing a retrofit, energy efficiency is something that's really good for the home. So we're promoting that and providing resources. We do have an ADU exemption that our city council wants us to take a closer look at and see if it's necessary. And then that weighted measure, as I said. So we definitely see this as almost like a pre-ordinance, and we're still working to refine it and improve it. And there's, a lot of opportunity, unlike traditional REACH code. New building or existing buildings are not affected by updates to new codes. So as long as these measures are still found cost effective, we can still keep incorporating or enforcing them into future code cycles. So I think this one has this ordinance has a little bit more opportunity to make some of these adjustments. And then the last thing I mentioned, the equity, as well as in this drought, we've gotten some feedback and some suggestions to see if we can incorporate water savings, some requirements. There are some water saving requirements through hot water, low flow faucet fixtures for conserving hot water. So there's a little bit in there now, but again, with the drought and the focus on water, there's a lot of people that are interested in seeing if this ordinance can also provide some water savings as well as energy savings. Next slide. Perfect. There's our website, and if you go to the chulavistaca.gov/clean, you'll find information about the retrofit project. If there's any questions, feel free to let me know, and I'll also I'll share a link to the retrofit website in the chat when I'm done talking here. But there's also our climate action challenge. If you're from Chula Vista, I'd encourage you to sign up. It has some really great resources, and if you're looking for a voluntary way to support climate action, you can kind of see what we're doing and see if it's something you want to take as well. So thank you all very much for letting me talk about our ordinance. It's definitely exciting, and we hope that this will just kind of be the start of looking at more existing buildings and seeing how we can bring some of that sustainability we're incorporating in new homes to our existing building stock. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Corey. Really appreciate that. You mentioned you have a sustainability toolkit, a home sustainability toolkit that you allow people to. Is it something that they borrow or check out? Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it is something that we work with our library to do. Our library has, in the recent years, our library has really made a transition from providing books to providing a lot of different resources for homes. Residents can check out hotspots, videos, movies. We work with children to do education through our schools. And so now they can check out, it's a toolkit that has a guidebook in there to guide them through how to use the tools, but basically how to do a little bit of a DIY energy audit in your home. And like I said, some free devices like weather stripping, LED lights, that they can keep in the home as well. So it's just an opportunity to provide some of these like easy, accessible energy efficiency information and tools to them. And I'll share a link to that in the chat as well.
Please do. That sounds like a fabulous resource for your folks to help prepare them and just for general education about energy and electrification. Great. Thank you very much. Okay. We don't have Oh, we do have a question. We're going to deal with most of the questions at the end. We've saved time. I will answer them in the chat, or we will answer them at the end of the presentation. If by chance we reach the end of the presentation and don't get to your questions, we will attach them to the presentation that gets sent out. So we'll follow up with you to make sure that they all get answered. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move forward here. We're going to do a little bit of a screen change here, so hopefully this will go smoothly. Eric, I think you can go ahead and take that over from me. Eric Engelman is going to do a demonstration of our Cost Effectiveness Explorer tool. Eric has a master's degree in public policy from the University of California at San Diego. After working as a development economist internationally, he returned to San Diego to specialize in local government energy policy. Over the last decade, Eric served as senior policy advisor to the city of San Diego and consulted with local governments to help them accelerate energy policy adoption. Eric is the brains behind our Cost Effectiveness Explorer, with setting a goal for himself of helping staff make informed decisions during their policy development and also making the process easier. So we're going to let him show you some of the tools he's developed here and how that might work.
So much,
ahead,
Christy. I'm excited to share with you what we've been up to with the Cost Effectiveness Explorer. First slide.
You're a little bit soft, Eric, if you can speak a little bit more loudly.
Okay, is that better now?
Yes, please.
Okay. I can't see from my view the first slide. Is that visible?
I still see you. I am not seeing your screen yet.
Okay. I misunderstood, I thought, but okay, hold on.
Is it me doing the screen? I thought we were going, I apologize if I.
Yeah, Misty, if you could run,
Okay.
if you have my slides there, if you could run the PowerPoint slides, I'm going to do a couple slides of intro before I demonstrate the software.
Will do. Sorry about that. I apologize, Eric.
No worries. While it's loading, so the Cost Effectiveness Explorer, there it is a free web-based tool designed specifically for California local government staff and stakeholders like yourselves. And the objective is to accelerate REACH code adoption and support data-driven decision-making during policy design. Now, personally, during my years as a policy consultant, I had the privilege of working with Chula Vista on several decarbonization policies, including the one Corey just told us about. And the learnings from that work were instrumental in inspiring the concept for the Cost Effectiveness Explorer and continue to guide its development. So I'm quite grateful to Corey and the whole Chula Vista team. The Explorer launched in fall 2020, and we have a number of features available now with more to come. We currently include data from 4 statewide cost effectiveness studies. We also provide residential building stock estimates for each of the 500 plus California cities and counties. And we have features that help users build one or more hypothetical policy scenarios, model their impact, and collaborate with colleagues in their development. But rather than just tell you about it, I'd like to show you. Next slide. So to make this demo as relevant as possible, I'm going to go through the steps to build a policy similar to the one Chula Vista adopted, but using the newest cost effectiveness study for existing residential buildings, which wasn't available when Chula Vista adopted their ordinance back in January. There are many more features online than I have time to demonstrate, so I encourage you to explore on your own, or if you'd like to participate in an extended demo or training, contact us. All right, let's go to share my screen and start to demonstrate. Okay, awesome. So the Cost Effectiveness Explorer is available on its own subdomain here, explorer.localenergycodes.com, which you can type in directly, or you can go to localenergycodes.com main page and access it through the menu up top. And it's the second option here. So we start on a page where, for those of us who are unfamiliar with reach codes or need a refresher, you can read a quick guide that goes over the basics, or to jump right in, you can input your location. So we're going to input City of Chula Vista here. And the first rule of software is never do a live demo because you've got bugs, and that's what's happening now. So I'm going to jump through this. All right. All right, so for Chula Vista, we get to the Chula Vista homepage. So we can see that Chula Vista has 2 climate zones, as Corey told us, climate zone 7 and 10. At the top here, we see 5 different cost-effectiveness studies for which the Explorer offers results. We're interested today, again, in the newest version here. There's also a preview of some of the building stock data available for Chula Vista. And you can access that through here, but we're going to jump straight into the results, which you can also access on the menu bar here at the left. And as that's loading, you can see that at the top there are a number of filters that let you zoom in on the specific study results that you're interested in. So we know that we're interested in only the newest version of the existing low-rise residential building study released this year. So I'm going to uncheck all the other studies. And what we now have displayed are 3 boxes, each box showing the results for a different building vintage. And at the top of the box, we can see the unit and its estimate specific to the city of Chula Vista for this climate zone. And we can see that pre-1978 buildings make up 41.7% of the residential units, single-family residential units in Chula Vista. And then in this box, there is a list of measures and the results from the cost-effectiveness study. So we can expand that here and see that we have a really long list of measures. It was a very extensive study. So to make this list a little bit more manageable, I'm going to use the filters at the top to only show us the measures that were found cost-effective on an on-bill basis. So we still have a long list, but it's a little shorter here. And you can see that we have the list of measures on the left. You can access more information about each measure using this little eye icon here, which gives you content straight from the studies. And then some of the results from the studies are displayed here in this table to the right. All of these metrics shown here are customizable. So if you want to see different metrics or in a different order, you can change those here. And so for now, we're going to focus in on this. So let's say that one of our concerns is equity. We want to look at the lowest initial cost measures, which may be a hurdle for many low-income homeowners that are trying to comply with this policy. So I can sort here by incremental cost and show measures in order of lowest cost to highest initial cost here. I'm going to go back and sort again by cost effectiveness. And we can also see that if we scroll to the right here, beyond this per home results section, we can see estimated citywide impacts. So it's displaying the compliance cost for each measure for all of Chula Vista if this measure were to be mandated as part of a policy. So once we explore these results and we want to start to build our own policy, we can start to include measures just by clicking and check a checkbox there that we want to be a part of our policy. We can do that one by one, or if we want to have the tool automatically choose all possible cost-effective measures for this vintage, we can do that as well when they've been selected there. And then we can go ahead and click Save to Policy. And we can give our new policy a name. We'll call it Demo Policy. And we can go ahead and save that. Now we can go ahead and do that for additional vintages below, and additional climate zones. And once we've done so, we can then go and view our policy. I've already created some policies, so I created a policy that shows that includes all possible cost-effective measures for single-family homes for both climate zone 7 and 10. And so when we open that here, we then see the overall policy impact by year at the top, and we can see various metrics like compliance costs, or we can switch it to show the number of affected units, the emission savings, life cycle savings, etc. Scrolling down, we then see the overall policy impact broken down by things like climate zone, vintage, and we can even switch to the overall impact by measure again here. So we can see here, let's go to affected units. And we can see here that the compliance costs are being incurred by the homeowners over the course of the first 10 years, and that's because we are assuming in the calculations that the policy is going to be in effect for 10 years. And we can access those policy assumptions by clicking policy assumptions here, and we can view them and change them. Say we want to assume 15 years, and they will update the impact shown, and that feeds into the calculations for the other impacts like emission savings, etc. Now, one last feature I want to make sure to call out to you is our compare policies feature. And that lets us take several policies and compare the impact side by side. So if we want to look at the impact of different assumptions on a policy or the impact of the different scope of a policy, we can do that. So you can see here, I've taken the policy that we were just looking at and a previously saved policy that assumes, and it's relevant to this, that their electric supply will become 100% renewable by 2035, as opposed to the default assumption of 2045.
Eric, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you speak up a little bit more? The background noise is making it hard for folks to hear. Sorry.
Absolutely. Sorry about that. Is that better?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No worries. So I was saying we can compare different policies and look at the differences in their assumptions and then the impacts that result. So here we can see that these two policies have a different assumption for when the grid will become 100% renewable. The first one assuming that the grid will become 100% renewable for electricity by 2045, and the second one assuming by 2035. And then we can see the overall impact of those policies here. So I can also change which metrics are showing. And to simplify this view, I'm going to make it so it's only showing us the citywide emission savings. And now I can see the difference in those savings there. All right, so that's all that I have time to show you today for the demo. If we could go back to the slides, I'll stop sharing my screen here.
Okay, just a moment.
So there are a number of new features that we're working on that we're very excited about. One of them, which should be coming next month, is the ability to add flexible policy compliance options for your existing residential policies. And this will allow you to create a measure menu where the permit applicant can choose from a list of possible measures as an alternate path to comply with your policies. And those measures are weighted proportionate to the energy savings. Then we will be implementing a full ordinance drafting feature, which will customize a template ordinance based on the policy as you've specified it, and based on the flexible policy options that you've configured, and create an editable Word document that you can take as a first draft of your actual ordinance language. We're also working on future construction forecasts for each jurisdiction, and also future new construction policies and policy estimates based on the new construction forecasts. And then similarly, we're working on non-residential building stock data, and we're always adding additional studies as they become available. And thank you all. I encourage you to contact me and reach out if you have further questions, and if I can demonstrate more features for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric. We do have a few questions for you in the chat. We are going to go ahead and move on and let David do his presentation, as we're running a little bit short on time. David Friedman is following a 30-year career as an international lawyer in New York and Paris. David focused on corporate finance and energy and water projects. And following that, he retired in Palm Springs and began a new career as a volunteer environmental activist. Mr. Friedman has served since 2015 on the Palm Springs Sustainability Commission, where he has written many of the city's renewable energy and water conservation policies. He's currently vice chair of the commission. He has also served since 2019 as the chair of the Community Advisory Committee of Desert Community Energy, which is the CCA that provides electricity in Palm Springs. In addition, David is one of our most active Explorer users, and his feedback has been absolutely invaluable to us as we've developed the tool. So, welcome, David.
Thank you, Misty, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. Just a couple of minutes to talk about our policy goals in Palm Springs, and in particular, how I've been using the Explorer ever since it was launched late last year, develop a REACH code proposal for Palm Springs. Next slide, please. Okay, and that's me, and next slide, please. Okay, just a minute to talk about the current policy framework for Palm Springs. We have a sustainability plan that our city council approved in June 2016 with very clear direction from our council, not to just let those words be on paper, but to actually achieve our objectives. And the one that I've been most focused on, relevant for my work on the Explorer, is the one that says reduce the total energy use by all buildings built before 2012 by 10%. We are currently working on updating the plan. I've already done a lot of that work with our sustainability manager. We'll have it probably approved by our city council at the beginning of next year. Next slide, please. So where we are, also very relevant for using the Explorer, we recently completed a GHG inventory in connection with our ongoing general plan update. We are thrilled to find out that we achieved our 2020 GHG emissions reduction target of being even roughly with 1990 emissions. We're actually below 1990 emissions, which is the state goal, as a result of the launch last year of our CCA, which Desert Community Energy, as Misty just announced. Our city council made the policy decision to have all of the users of the CCA automatically enrolled in the carbon-free program. That actually has made the difference. And in fact, our success was mentioned in a USA Today article that ran last week. So we're glad to get some recognition there. Residential energy represents about 22.4% of their estimated GHG emissions. Once again, that's what I'm focusing on right now with the Explorer. And we're also working on the largest contributors, which are transportation for more than half, and commercial and industrial energy. And separately, I'm working on a proposal involving our indoor cannabis facilities. Next slide, please. So with that in mind, with that framework of our policy, I kind of set myself an objective using the Explorer, and that's to design a policy that will reduce cost and energy savings for mixed fuel existing residential buildings undergoing renovations with additional measures required for higher building permit values. And if that sounds a lot like what Corey just explained from Chula Vista, yes, it is. And thank you, Corey. I've been following the Chula Vista model and also Piedmont up in the Bay Area. As Corey mentioned, they have a dollar sort of threshold as well. So I've been using those two as my main guides. So when I first started working on the Explorer, a couple of sort of introductory thoughts that very much helped me. There's a quick guide that helps you understand exactly what's in there and how I'd use it, and also building stock estimates to give you a high level view of the building stock in your city. Now that's based on largely California Department of Finance data, which is from a couple of years ago. There are likely to be better data that are going to come out now that the Census 2020 census has just been released. So, but it's really good on directional basis, and it allows you to check the vintages of your houses. There's a lot of information in the bubbles. So when you click on any of those bubbles that Eric just showed you, you can see a lot more information and links to the actual underlying cost-effective studies that Misty and her team have done. So as Eric has mentioned, you can use the filters to narrow the source by source study. Building fuel and type, and then you can see how that works in cost effectiveness for home results. And then as Eric showed you, you can add emissions and energy savings and citywide estimates right after that. Next slide, please. So based on my initial work, I've been able to use the Explorer to evaluate different options. What measures have the least cost and the highest benefit cost ratios? And as Eric showed you, you can click on those arrows to see which are the highest benefit cost ratios and which are the least cost. That's kind of an ideal situation for Palm Springs. Cost effectiveness, which is already required by the Energy Code. For REACH code, it's easier to present to our city council and stakeholders. If you spend this much money upfront, look how much money you're going to save over your life cycle of 30 years. And also, we don't want to disincentivize measures for cost reasons. What measures produce the most energy savings and THG reductions? Those align with city policy, as I mentioned, and also the policies of Desert Community Energy. And in our case, most housing stock is pre-1978 with limited insulation. So the envelope measures, such as additional insulation, will definitely have very good results. And also in Palm Springs, nearly all of our houses are mixed fuel. So I've been focusing on the mixed fuel homes. Electrification is a great idea, but because we have gas-powered pool heaters for most of our houses, and that's just a feature of our market, there are some challenges for doing all electric homes. And as Eric showed you, the Explorer shows all this information at a glance just by doing a whole bunch of clicks. Next slide, please. So I've been able to compare and contrast packages to create different packages based on policy objectives that I mentioned and number of measures required by building permit amounts. That's kind of, once again, a feature of what Corey explained for Chula Vista and also the Piedmont ordinance. And there are separate packages for existing single family residential homes, which are based on the most recent 2021 study. And then there's existing multifamily residential and new residential buildings, which are from a 2019 study, but that's in the course of being updated by Misty and her team. As Eric showed you, you combine various measures into different packages. Certain measures, as we saw, at least for Palm Springs in our climate zone, are cost effective when combined, but not individually. And you can use the Explorer to kind of figure out how to compare and contrast that. I have been looking particularly for the equity sort of component of that, and noticed that water heating package and LED lighting are relatively low cost, but high benefits. So that's one of our features there. And because we have a CCA with most of the people on carbon free, even though we might have not a full GHG reduction events, we will be able to use the Explorer to see how we can most reduce energy and mitigate climate impacts. Palm Springs, where it's 120 throughout the summer, we're really in a big climate crisis in our climate zone. Next slide, please. So lessons learned from using the Explorer in our next steps. It really helped to have a GHG inventory with benchmarks for our meet our state goals. I've been establishing the policy based on our city's goals and those of our CCA and IOU or your POU if you're in that city that has one. Know those policies and start with a policy objective. Once again, know your building stock, both for existing buildings, but also if you're going to look at a REACH code for new construction, you'll be able to have an idea of how many buildings will be built under your regional housing needs allocation that just came out from the state. The energy code was adopted by the Energy Commission last week, so know what changes are going to be there and what gaps can be filled in. As Eric mentioned, the Explorer is updated frequently, so check to see what's new. And with all that in mind, I'm working on the policy. Our goal is to present it to our city council at the end of October with some policy options and direction for future research. I'll be using the latest Explorer features, following what Eric is doing there, Corey is doing in Chula Vista, and also Encinitas is going to adopt a REACH code, at least I consider their council tomorrow night. So I'll be looking at that also for some inspiration. Thank you very much and look forward to any questions.
Thank you very much, David. That was an excellent presentation, and you have done an amazing amount of work in Palm Springs, getting things ready to go. I know you had to do quite a bit of prep before you could get to this point. So appreciate all your efforts there. You did mention something I wanted to ask you about, if you have just one more moment.
Sure.
You mentioned that Palm Springs has a CCA that provides mostly carbon-free electricity. Yet you're still moving forward with these policies. Do you think there's still benefit?
Yes, and the benefit for our case, once again, and I know this from my personal experience, I have a beautiful Palm Springs mid-century modern house. It had no insulation. So when I moved full-time, I had a lot of work done for envelope work. The net result, and my CCA probably hates me, is that I have zero electric bills because I've done so much work and a lot of passive house features with ceiling fans and shades and things like that. So yes, the envelope in particular is it won't reduce our GHG, as I mentioned, because most people are on carbon free. It will reduce electricity bills and be massively cost effective in our climate zone.
And just to add to that, because
Thank
again,
you.
that's something that we've encountered in Chula Vista. When we're looking at the heat waves that are affecting the entire state's power grid, insulation is the first thing that we should be looking at and trying to make sure that we're not just asking residents to go without, but that we're making their homes efficient enough and comfortable enough so they don't need to turn on their air conditioner or don't need to run it as much. So, I think even if you are, even from a not greenhouse gas emission perspective, doing these energy efficiency improvements to older existing homes is going to be really important for our entire grid's economy going forward.
Indeed, I agree, Corey. The cheapest and cleanest energy is that energy we don't use. And as we electrify more and more, those efficiency improvements and ability to shift load and all those kinds of great interactivity is going to just be more and more important. David, it looks like you might have something to add.
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
Waiting
Sorry
for
about that. Looks like
questions.
you were about to say something. I believe that we've answered all the questions that appeared in the Q&A panel. Are there any other questions from the attendees?
I'll just, while they're typing them in, I will say one of the questions that I got was about potential pushback from homeowners. And yes, this is a new area for us. And I can say, just talking to our development staff, and saying, no, this is going to be in the existing portion of the house. It sometimes I had to say it a number of times because it's almost like, no, we don't look at the existing portion of the house. And you have to well, but we can, and so just because you've done something one way doesn't mean you have to always do it that way. That being said, as I mentioned, we already do know there's some limitations on what the inspectors can inspect. And so we're just trying to kind of move forward with what we can and understand that it might be a less than perfect implementation, but we're still hopeful that it will get some more energy efficiency into the homes and provide an opportunity for us to talk about the value of energy efficiency in homes.
Where I expect is actually initial sort of speed bump is actually our building staff. So I think Corey raised an issue that you need to sell this internally to your staff before you actually go out to your first stakeholder are the people in your colleagues in City Hall before you go out to homeowners and builders and real estate agents. You need to sell this internally.
And one thing I will say is that, that's an area where, I'm not a director or anything like that. And so it is really valuable to have some high level, whether that be, assistant city manager, city council. It's really helpful to have someone that does have the ability to direct staff to have buy on and say, yes, this is an important thing for us to do. Because I know that we had, we had to have some of those conversations, and it is really helpful when, there's someone up high that says this is a sustainability initiative that we're doing. And so it's always good to kind of build those support structures.
Yeah, which is why I'm going to our city council, because they can give the direction. We have a very progressive pro sustainability city council, and I know them quite well. So I'm kind of pitching this to hit their hot buttons so they can give the necessary direction to staff.
Yes, those are great strategies for both of you. I think it's really, really wonderful that you're working with your building department and figuring out how to assemble the resources, Corey, to actually implement the ordinance effectively and doing that flexibly. I think that's fabulous, and something that I think a lot of jurisdictions are probably going to face in implementation with resources being so constrained. We do have one more question. We have about 3 minutes, so I'm going to do this quickly here. Did you do any education around what energy efficiency means for renters and what decarbonization means to them? And Serena, would you like to go ahead and take that? I just saw that says you would like to answer this question. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading it.
So we know which one to focus on.
I see what you did. I apologize. Questions for Corey, actually.
I would say for our ordinance, no. This ordinance was really targeted towards the homeowners that are going to be applying for these types of projects. That being said, I think the benefit to the renters is definitely something that we're talking about as a benefit to the homeowner. Your property is going to use less energy. It's going to be more resilient in heat waves. And so we think there's definitely some advantages, but we've been really focused on the homeowner who's going to be complying with our ordinance. But that being said, we still have been talking and using it as a springboard to talk about general energy efficiency for renters. But I'd say the only other kind of thing that component where renters played a piece was when we did scale it back a little bit. We really wanted to make sure that this wasn't going to be an ordinance that would require a homeowner to increase the rent. We wanted it to be a little bit easier for them to comply with, so we did scale it back. But other than that, like I said, we've been focused on the homeowners.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And thank you all of our presenters for sharing your experiences and also for demonstrating how the Explorer can facilitate both the adoption and implementation process. As you know, REACH codes are intended to address local conditions. They are incredibly flexible, and they can be a very powerful policy lever. You can target them very, very narrowly to a specific occupancy type or a measure, or a REACH code could represent a pretty big change in a jurisdiction's direction, such as enacting a gas moratorium. So I want to thank all of our presenters, and thank you. I know that we're running out of time, and I need to turn it back over to the SEEK folks. We really appreciate your time today, and please contact any of us to follow up should you have any additional questions. Thank you all.
Perfect. Thank you, Misty, and to our panel. It's really great to see these helpful tools out there available for folks. All right, so I just want to give a last shout out to our sponsors and also point you all towards the remaining sessions in the forum. We have just 2 days left of this 3-week journey, so please do, if you haven't already, register for some of our later events. And then also, if you haven't already, please do take the post-session survey for the sessions you've been attending. You can give feedback on as many sessions as you want, and you can also enter into a raffle to win a $50 gift card. So please do give us your feedback, and like Misty said, feel free to reach out to any of the speakers if you need some more information. Have a nice day, everyone.
Great day.
Thank you.